The crystalline spire of the Glypton primacy pierced the nebular clouds, a monument of pure, resonant silicon that hummed with the energy of a captured star. Inside, in the grand concourse of harmonious exchange, the air itself tasted of manufactured perfection, a cocktail of nitrogen, oxygen, argon, and a dozen other trace gases tailored to the biologies of the 37 species in attendance. Laughter, a surprisingly common sound across the galaxy once translated, echoed through the cavernous space. Ambassador Aris Thorn of the Terran Confederacy held a flute of shimmering Vexian nectar, its effervescence tickling his nose. He smiled, a genuine, easy expression he had perfected over 2 decades of diplomatic service. And so, the Lumini delegate tells me, "My good sir, you have mistaken my primary spawning pool for the waste reclamation unit." I tell you, mediator, I nearly shed my exoskeleton. High Mediator Xyler of the Cathar Confederacy let out a low, rumbling chuff that was the Cathar equivalent of a hearty laugh. His massive, furred frame, a blend of feline grace and reptilian power, dwarfed the human ambassador. 2 sets of eyes, one forward-facing for predatory focus and one set laterally for peripheral awareness, blinked in sequence. An amusing anecdote, ambassador. It is a testament to the Glypton's atmospheric engineering that a creature of your delicate constitution can even share the same air as a Lumini. The condescension was subtle, a polished veneer over the Cathar's ingrained sense of superiority. They were apex predators from a world of savage megafauna, a fact evident in every line of Xyler's muscular body, and the casual way he rested a 3-taloned hand on the ceremonial blade at his hip. To the Cathar, humans were an anomaly, soft, fragile-looking with dull senses and no natural weapons. They were persistence predators, yes, their own history spoke of that, but in a galaxy of beings with carapaces, claws, and venom sacs, they appeared hopelessly outmatched. Yet here they were, a burgeoning power, their expansion across their local cluster marked by a speed that defied their apparent biological limitations. "We are an adaptable species, mediator," Aris said, his tone light. He took a sip of the nectar. "We have to be. Our homeworld wasn't exactly a garden." Across the hall, Commander Eva Rostova, head of the Terran security detail, stood with 2 of her officers. Unlike Aris, she did not smile. Her gaze was a constant, sweeping patrol of the concourse, her posture relaxed but radiating a kinetic stillness. She and her team were dressed in the same formal, dark blue uniforms as the diplomatic staff, their only distinction the small, silver insignia of a hawk on their collars. They looked like aides, not soldiers. It was a deliberate choice. Humanity always came in peace, their image carefully curated. They were the friendly newcomers, the eager traders, the slightly naive explorers happy to join the galactic community. The Glypton hosts, crystalline entities that communicated through chimes and shifting light patterns, drifted through the crowd, ensuring harmony. The insectoid Vex delegates clustered near the nutrient paste dispensers, their multifaceted eyes taking in everything with unnerving focus. The small, amphibious Lumini diplomats remained near the misting fountains, their large, dark eyes conveying a perpetual state of gentle concern. It was a tableau of galactic cooperation, a testament to the power of commerce over conflict. Xyler followed Aris's gaze toward his security chief. "Your commander Rostova seems tense. Does the harmony of this place displease her?" "Eva is pleased when a perimeter is secure, mediator." "It is the nature of her work," Aris replied smoothly. "She sees potential threats in shifting shadows and spilled drinks. It allows men like me to see only potential partners." Xyler rumbled again, a sound of skeptical amusement. He had studied the humans. Their data streams were a chaotic mix of sublime art, profound philosophy, and the most savage, brutal warfare imaginable. They were a species of contradictions. They preached peace while their history was a litany of war. They composed symphonies and then developed weapons capable of cracking planets. The Cathar Intelligence Council had a running debate. Were humans clever, lucky prey who had stumbled upon technology, or were they something else entirely, something hiding its true nature behind a disarming facade? Xyler leaned toward the latter. There was something in their eyes, a depth of ancient, weary knowledge that did not match their relatively short time on the galactic stage. The summit had been progressing for 3 standard days. Trade routes were being finalized. Tariffs were being negotiated. The primary sticking point was the Cathar's insistence on exclusive mining rights in the resource-rich Kepler 186 system, which the Terran Confederacy also claimed. Eris had been masterful, deflecting, charming, and conceding minor points to build goodwill, all while holding firm on the core issue. His strategy was one of patience, of making the humans seem so reasonable and non-threatening that the Cathar would eventually concede out of a sense of magnanimous superiority. A young human aide, Leo, moved through the assembled dignitaries, his service tray laden with delicate Glypton energy crystals for refreshment. He was new, barely 20 standard years old, his face a mask of nervous concentration as he navigated between the hulking Cathar and the fragile Lumini. He was a low-level diplomatic attaché, a glorified waiter for this event, one of the 53 humans present in the grand concourse. Eris was in the middle of a sentence, a light-hearted jest about the complexities of Vex mating rituals, when Leo passed behind the main cluster of Cathar and human diplomats. As the aide moved, the edge of his service jacket brushed against the tray he carried. For a microsecond, the contact caused a piece of technology concealed beneath his uniform to shift against the metallic fabric of his sleeve. The sound was infinitesimal. It was not a clang, not a scrape, not even a whisper. It was a high-frequency vibration, a faint, almost subliminal whine at over 23,000 hertz, far beyond the auditory range of any species present. The power cell of the phased vibroknife, now fully charged and armed, had produced a harmonic resonance that lasted less than a tenth of a second. To the Glypton's ambient sensors, it was null. To the Vex's sensitive antennae, it was below the threshold of atmospheric noise. To the Cathar's predatory ears, tuned to the snap of a twig or the panicked breath of prey, it simply did not exist. But to the humans, it was a scream. It happened in a space shorter than a single heartbeat. Ambassador Eris Thorne's friendly smile did not fade. It froze. His eyes, a moment before warm and crinkling at the corners, became chips of ice. His head, which had been angled politely toward Xyler, snapped 90 degrees to the left, his gaze locking onto the back of the young aide, Leo. His body, which had been a study in relaxed diplomacy, went rigid, the muscles in his neck and shoulders cording as if from an electric shock. The flute in his hand was not dropped. It was held in a grip of sudden, crushing pressure. Simultaneously, across the hall, Commander Eva Rostova, who had been observing the Vex delegation, turned. Her two officers, flanking her, turned with her. Their movements were not similar. They were identical. 3 bodies, 3 heads, snapping to face Leo with a synchronized precision that was not trained but innate. Their hands, which had been held loosely at their sides, drifted with predatory slowness toward their waists. Every human in the room reacted. The aides taking notes, the junior diplomats in conversation, the engineers monitoring the translation feeds, the cooks in the human-catered section of the kitchens visible through a service window. 53 individuals scattered across a vast hall, engaged in dozens of different activities. 53 heads turned. 53 bodies tensed. 53 pairs of eyes of every shade from blue to brown to green locked onto the same single, unsuspecting target. The laughter died. The chiming of the Glyptons faltered. The chatter and rumbling and clicking of 100 conversations evaporated into absolute, profound silence. The sudden vacuum of sound was the first thing the other species registered. The second was the sight. The humans, who moments before had been a disparate collection of individuals, had become a single, unified entity. They were a pack, a pride, a school of predators that had just caught the scent of blood. Their posture was no longer that of soft-skinned diplomats. It was the coiled, imminent violence of something that knew, with absolute certainty, that it was the most dangerous thing in the room. Their faces, which had been open and expressive, were now blank, unreadable masks of pure, cold focus. High Mediator Xyler felt an emotion so foreign, so ancient, that it took him a moment to identify it. It was fear. A primal, instinctual terror that resonated deep in his species' genetic memory, from a time before the Cathar had become the undisputed masters of their world. This was not the calculated respect one gave a rival. This was the sudden, heart-stopping realization that the placid, grazing herbivore you were stalking was not an herbivore at all. His lateral eyes, designed to catch the slightest flicker of movement, saw it all. The perfect synchronization, the chilling speed, the absolute certainty. It was a pack response, faster than thought, more unified than any military drill he had ever witnessed. His own elite Cathar guard, the pinnacle of predatory training, could not have matched that silent, instantaneous coordination. The air in the room grew cold. The Vex delegates instinctively clustered together, their limbs twitching nervously. The Lumini ambassador actually whimpered, a soft, pathetic sound in the crushing silence. The humans did not seem to be breathing. They were statues, their collective attention a physical weight in the room, a focused beam of terrifying intensity aimed at the back of one of their own. Leo, the young aide, blissfully unaware, took another step. And then, with the same unnatural unity, the humans moved. Eva Rostova was a blur. She crossed 15 meters of open floor in a time that should have been impossible for a bipedal organism of her mass without technological assistance. Her movement was silent, fluid, a hunter's dash that ended as she intercepted Leo. She did not tackle him. She simply flowed around him, one hand gripping his arm to spin him off balance, the other snaking inside his jacket with surgical precision. She plucked the vibroknife from its concealed sheath before he even had time to register her presence. Her two officers formed a perfect triangle around them, their bodies shielding the action from the rest of the concourse, their hands now resting on the sidearms they had revealed from beneath their own jackets. Across the room, Aris Thorn had not moved from his spot, but his entire demeanor had transformed. He was no longer a diplomat. He was a sentinel. He placed the Vexian flute down on a nearby table with a steady hand, the sound of its contact with the crystalline surface unnaturally loud in the silence. He then turned his head slowly to face High Mediator Xyler. The warmth was gone from his eyes. In its place was a flat, ancient calm that was more terrifying than any open threat. "Mediator," Aris said, his voice level and devoid of any emotion, "please instruct your guards to remain where they are." Xyler's gaze flickered to his own Cathar honor guard. Their fur was bristling, their hands resting on the hilts of their energy pulse rifles, their predatory instincts screaming at the sudden, coordinated display of threat. They were confused, looking to him for a command. Attack, defend. They didn't know, they only knew that something fundamental and dangerous had just been revealed. "What is the meaning of this, Ambassador?" Xyler's voice was a low growl, the rumble of a gathering storm. His fear was rapidly being replaced by outrage and suspicion. "A minor internal security matter, Mediator, I assure you," Aris said, but the words were hollow. The mask of the amiable, slightly bumbling human had not just slipped. It had been shattered. Everyone in the grand concourse had seen what lay beneath. Every species, from the mightiest Cathar to the humblest Lumini, had just witnessed 53 members of a supposedly soft-skinned, dull-sensed prey species react in perfect unison to a stimulus that no one else had even perceived. The summit was over. The pleasantries were finished. A new and far more dangerous negotiation had just begun. And as Xyler stared into the human ambassador's cold, calculating eyes, he understood that the Cathar, the galaxy's self-proclaimed apex predators, had been negotiating with a creature they did not understand at all. And that was, perhaps, the most terrifying realization of all. The silence in the aftermath was a living thing, thick and suffocating. Commander Rostova and her officers escorted the now pale and trembling Leo from the concourse with an efficiency that was as terrifying as their initial reaction. They moved as a unit, a three-person phalanx that the other species instinctively parted for. No one spoke. No one dared to. Aris Thorn remained in his place, a pillar of calm in the hurricane of confusion and fear. He let the silence stretch, allowing the full weight of what had just happened to settle into the minds of every alien diplomat present. He could feel their eyes on him, the multifaceted stares of the Vex, the shimmering gazes of the Glyptons, and the four intensely focused eyes of High Mediator Xyler. He was no longer Aris the affable trader. He was Thorn, representative of a species that had just revealed a disquieting, inexplicable capability. Finally, a series of soft, melodic chimes emanated from the Glypton host nearest them. The universal translator rendered the sound into sterile, synthesized speech in their earpieces. Explanation is required, Ambassador Thorne. The parameters of Concord have been violated. An armed individual was present. Your delegation responded to a threat that our internal sensor grid, with a sensitivity of 0.001 decibels and a full spectrum analysis, did not register. The weapon was on a shielded, non-emission frequency until armed primacy, Aris replied, his voice still unnervingly level. A vibro blade with a phased harmonic cell. The arming sequence produces a momentary high-frequency resonance. It is an unfortunate design flaw we have noted in the past. Xyler took a step forward, his immense frame radiating menace. The Cathar were not beings to be easily intimidated, and his initial shock was now curdling into a dangerous, analytical fury. High frequency. Ambassador, my species can hear the heartbeat of a field mouse at 50 paces. The Glypton sensors can detect the gravitational stress of a passing ship. You are telling me that every single one of your people heard something that the most advanced auditory systems in this room, biological or technological, could not. Yes, Aris said simply. There was no point in lying now. The demonstration had been too absolute, too damning. The only path forward was a carefully managed truth. That is not possible, hissed the vexed delegate, its mandibles clicking in agitation. Bioacoustic limitations are a function of physics. Your fleshy auditory organs cannot defy them. Our evolution was competitive, Aris said, choosing his words with the care of a man defusing a bomb. He turned his full attention back to Xyler, recognizing him as the true center of power and the greatest potential threat. Our homeworld, Earth, is not a tranquil place. For millions of years, our ancestors were both predator and prey. We were hunted by things that moved in silence, and we hunted things that could hear a leaf fall a click away. Survival depended on perceiving the imperceptible. The faintest tremor through the ground, the slightest change in air pressure, the subtle scent of a predator upwind, the high-frequency squeak of a rodent in its burrow. He paused, letting the implications sink in. We are not a specialized species, mediator. We are a generalized one. But our senses, while not having the range of a Cathar's hearing or the chemical acuity of a Vex's antenna, are wired for one thing above all others: pattern recognition. Specifically, the recognition of patterns that signify a threat. Pattern recognition does not explain that. Xyler gestured with a clawed hand to the entire room, encompassing the memory of the terrifyingly unified reaction. That was not a reaction. That was an instinct, a hive-mind response. An auditory startle reflex, Aris corrected gently, deeply ingrained. When every member of a species shares the same fundamental survival wiring, their reactions to the same stimulus will be similar. The sound of a charging predator, the snap of a twig in a silent forest, or the 23 kHz arming sequence of a phased weapon. To our subconscious, it is all the same signal: threat, immediate, close. He was walking a razor's edge. He had to provide an explanation that was plausible enough to be accepted, but not so alarming that it would trigger a full-scale panic or a preemptive strike. He was framing one of humanity's greatest strengths as a mere evolutionary quirk, a vestigial reflex from a bygone era. A private comm channel chimed in Aris's inner ear. It was Rostova. Ambassador, we have the assailant. He's one of ours. Leo Jansen, junior attaché. He's talking. He's part of a fringe group. Humanity first. They believe we should stop hiding. They wanted to create an incident to show our true strength. Damn them, Aris thought, the first crack in his icy composure. Fools. They think strength is about showing your teeth. True strength is making sure no one ever knows the full extent of your bite. My apologies, gentlemen, Aris said, his external demeanor unchanged. It seems the threat was from a misguided member of my own species. A radical who believes humanity's interests are best served through intimidation rather than cooperation. I offer my sincerest apologies on behalf of the Terran Confederacy. We will deal with this internally. Xyler's secondary eyes swiveled to study the other humans in the room. They were beginning to relax, but it was a conscious, deliberate act. The predatory stillness was receding, replaced by a feigned casualness that was almost as unsettling. They were putting the masks back on. Intimidation, Xyler repeated, his voice a low growl. You have succeeded on that front, Ambassador. You speak of your senses as a simple, startle reflex. I am a predator. I have spent my life studying the nuances of a hunt. What I witnessed was not the panic of prey. It was the instant target acquisition of a pack of hunters. You did not flinch away from the sound. You turned towards it, every single one of you. He took another step closer, lowering his voice so only Aris and the nearby Glypton could hear. We have studied your history. We know of your brutal past. We dismissed it as the primitive savagery of a young species. We were wrong. Your entire civilization has been shaped by it, hasn't it? Your bodies, your minds, even your diplomacy. This charming, non-threatening facade, it is a form of camouflage, is it not? The ultimate survival strategy for a predator living amongst bigger, stronger creatures. Pretend to be harmless. Aris met the Cathar's intense, four-eyed stare without flinching. Every species wears a mask in diplomacy, mediator. Yours is one of indomitable strength and honor. The Vex, one of cold, unfeeling logic. The Glyptons, one of serene wisdom. Ours is one of affability. Is it really so surprising that our mask is tailored to our particular history? The Glypton chimed again. The logic is sound. However, the revelation of this biological capability changes the strategic landscape of this summit. Trust has been compromised. On the contrary, Aris countered, seeing a narrow path forward. Trust can only be built on truth. You have now seen a sliver of a deeper truth about my species. We are not the fragile, naive newcomers you thought we were. We are survivors, and we are very, very good at it. That should not be a cause for fear, mediator. It should be a cause for reassurance. An ally who is difficult to kill is a valuable ally indeed. Xyler was silent for a long moment, his massive chest rising and falling slowly. His mind was racing, recontextualizing every interaction he'd ever had with a human. Their constant politeness, their deference, their willingness to compromise on minor issues. It wasn't weakness. It was a strategy. They were gathering information, assessing threats, lulling potential rivals into a false sense of security. They weren't playing the same game as everyone else. They were playing a much older one. The trade negotiations for the Kepler 186 system are suspended, Xyler declared, his voice resonating with finality. The Cathar delegation must confer. We are no longer negotiating for mineral rights, Ambassador Thorn. We are reevaluating the very nature of our relationship with the Terran Confederacy. He turned, his huge form commanding the attention of the room, and gestured to his delegation. Without another word, the Cathar contingent turned and strode from the grand concourse, their heavy footfalls echoing in the renewed, tense silence. One by one, the other delegations followed suit, casting nervous, uncertain glances at the remaining humans. Soon, only the Terran delegation and the silent, shimmering Glypton hosts remained. The mask was off. The game had changed. And Aris Thorn knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that humanity's carefully constructed place in the galaxy had just become infinitely more precarious and infinitely more dangerous. In a shielded chamber deep within the Cathar delegation's wing of the spire, High Mediator Xyler paced before a holographic display. The vast, star-dusted map of the quadrant seemed to mock him with its serene beauty. His aide, a younger, leaner Cathar named Grak, stood rigidly by the door, his fur still bristling from the incident. "Replay the recording," Xyler commanded, his voice a low growl. "Isolate the human reactions. Timestamp synchronization." The air shimmered and a three-dimensional replay of the grand concourse appeared. He watched it again for the 10th time. The moment Leo passed, the infinitesimal, unheard sound, and then the snap. 53 human bodies moving as one. "Synchronization is perfect," Grak reported, his voice tight. "Down to the millisecond, we've run every analysis. There was no technological element, no comm signal, no neural link. The Glyptons confirm it's purely biological." "A startle reflex," Xyler spat the words like a curse. "He lies, or rather he tells a truth so stripped of context it becomes a lie. A prey animal startles, it scatters, it flees. It does not acquire a target with that level of unified precision." He stopped pacing and zoomed the holographic display in on Ambassador Thorn's face at the moment of the turn. The amiable mask was gone. Xyler saw it now for what it was, a predatory blankness. the face of a hunter that has locked onto its quarry and is calculating the precise moment to strike. "Send a priority communique to the Admiralty," Xyler ordered. "Full intelligence packet. The recording, Thorne's explanation, my preliminary analysis. Retask the long-range observation posts on the Terran border. I want a full spectrum analysis of their colony worlds, their military installations, everything. Scan for biosignatures we previously dismissed as anomalies. I suspect their capabilities are not limited to hearing." "Mediator," Grack ventured, his tone cautious. "Are you suggesting they pose a military threat? Their fleet is a fraction of our own. Their ships are adequate, but they lack the raw power of a Cathar battlecruiser. Did you see their ships in that hall, Grack? Or did you see their diplomats?" Xyler rounded on him, his 4 eyes blazing. "We judge them by their technology, by the thickness of their armor plating. We have been fools. We should have been judging them by their biology. A species is not its tools. A species is its instincts, its history, its very flesh and bone. Their tools are merely an extension of what they already are." He gestured back at the frozen hologram. "Their true weapon is not their plasma cannons or their kinetic drivers. It is the fact that 53 of them can become one predator in the blink of an eye. The fact that they can perceive a threat our best sensors cannot. Think, Grack, what else can they perceive? Can they smell fear? Can they see the subtle tells of deception in the shift of a diplomat's mandible? We have been negotiating with them as if they were blind and deaf. What if they have been reading us like an open book from the very beginning?" The thought was chilling. Every negotiation, every treaty, every bluff and counterbluff the Cathar had ever engaged in with the humans was now suspect. Had the humans known every time they were lying? Had they been playing along, feigning ignorance for reasons of their own? "Access the historical archives," Xyler commanded. "Everything we have on their homeworld, Earth, geology, paleontology, biology. Cross-reference it with their early spacefaring history. I want to understand the crucible that forged them." The holographic display shifted, showing images of Earth, a vibrant, chaotic world teeming with life. Xyler watched simulations of its tumultuous history, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, ice ages. Mass extinction events that would have sterilized most other worlds. Yet on Earth life clung on, adapted, and evolved with ferocious tenacity. He saw images of Earth's predators and prey, sharks and seals, lions and wildebeest, wolves and elk. An endless, brutal arms race of fang against flesh, of speed against stamina, of camouflage against perception. And then he saw humanity's ancestors, frail, soft-skinned primates. They should have been wiped out 100 times over. But they weren't. They survived. They thrived. They learned to work together, to hunt in packs, to outthink what they could not outfight. They became the ultimate persistence hunters, running their prey to exhaustion. They became the ultimate tool users, crafting spears and arrows to kill at a distance. They became the ultimate generalists, able to survive in any climate, eat any food, and overcome any obstacle. They did not just survive their death world. They conquered it. They tamed its fiercest predators and drove them to extinction. They bent its very climate to their will. They were not the children of a gentle garden. They were the hardened survivors of a planetary slaughterhouse. "By the first ancestor," Grack whispered, his gaze fixed on a depiction of an early human hunting party bringing down a colossal mammoth. "They have been apex predators for a very, very long time." "No," Xyler corrected softly, his mind reaching a new, more profound understanding. "That is the mistake we keep making. We see things in our own terms, predator-prey. We are the lion, the Lumini are the gazelle, but the humans, they are not lions, they are something else. They were the ones who set traps for the lions. They were the ones who learned to steal the pack's kill. They hunted the hunters." He looked at Grack, his expression grim. "They are a meta-predator, a species that preys on the hierarchy itself, and we, in our arrogance, invited them to the summit and treated them like clever monkeys who had just learned to use fire." A chime announced an incoming message. It was from Ambassador Thorne. He was requesting a private meeting. No aides, no guards, just the two of them. Grack instinctively growled. "It is a trap." "Of course it is," Xyler said, a strange, grim smile touching his lips. "Everything they do is a trap of one kind or another. But it is a trap I must walk into. Because if I don't, The only alternative my government will see is a preemptive war. And I am beginning to suspect that a war with humanity is a trap from which no one would escape. He straightened to his full, imposing height. Tell the ambassador I accept. The meeting place was one of the spire's observation decks, a hemisphere of transparent crystal looking out onto the swirling blues and purples of the Cygnus Rift Nebula. It was a neutral space, chosen for its beauty and its lack of tactical advantages. Eris Thorn stood alone, his hands clasped behind his back, looking out at the river of stars. He wore the same simple dark blue diplomatic uniform. He was unarmed. Xyler entered alone, dismissing his honor guard with a sharp gesture. The doors hissed shut behind him, sealing them in. The only sound was the low, ambient hum of the spire's life support. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They were two figures silhouetted against a backdrop of cosmic grandeur, the future of their species resting on the words they would choose. A magnificent view, Eris said finally, his voice calm and measured. It provides a certain perspective. It makes our little squabbles over mining rights seem insignificant. I am no longer interested in mining rights, Ambassador, Xyler rumbled, stepping up beside him. He was a full meter taller than the human, a mountain of fur and muscle. I am interested in the truth. Eris turned to face him. The truth is a complicated thing, Mediator. We gave you a piece of it in the concourse. An evolutionary explanation for a biological reflex. A lie of omission, Xyler countered, his voice sharp. You told us what happened. You did not tell us why. You did not tell us what it means. I have spent the last cycle reviewing my intelligence on your species. The high-frequency hearing is just the beginning, isn't it? Eris did not reply. His silence was its own answer. The subconscious analysis of micro-expressions, Xyler continued, ticking the points off on his claws. The ability to detect pheromonal shifts in the air, to literally smell fear or deception. The unnervingly accurate spatial awareness that allows your soldiers to navigate complex environments without sensor aids. The pack dynamics that allow for silent, non-verbal communication and coordination in the field. Your file is filled with reports of these anomalies, all of them dismissed by my analysts as exaggerated field reports or human propaganda. They were not exaggerations, were they? Our minds are wired to process an immense amount of sensory data, Eris admitted quietly. Most of it subconsciously. We notice things without realizing we notice them. On a conscious level, I am having a conversation with you. On a subconscious level, my mind is tracking your breathing rate, the subtle dilation of your pupils, the tension in your shoulders, the faint scent of adrenaline your body is emitting. It is building a threat assessment profile. It is always building a threat assessment profile. We can't turn it off. Xyler felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. The human was admitting that, at a level deeper than thought, he was being constantly, passively analyzed for weakness. And the synchronization, the startle reflex. A threat signal perceived by one member of the pack is instantly communicated to the others. It's not telepathy, it's a cascade. My body tensed. Commander Rostova, who was watching me out of the corner of her eye, saw the subtle, unconscious shift in posture that precedes a reaction. Her body mirrored mine instinctively. The two officers watching her mirrored her. Others saw them. It ripples through the group in milliseconds. It's a survival mechanism designed for a world where the predator in the grass could be seen by only one of us. It ensures the whole pack reacts to a threat only one of them has perceived. Here it was. The truth. Not a comforting evolutionary quirk, but a sophisticated, networked threat response system built into their very biology. They were a walking, talking sensor grid. Why hide it? Xyler asked, the question that burned at the center of his confusion. Such abilities would grant you immense respect, power even. A sad, weary smile touched Eris's lips. Mediator, what does your history teach you to do when you encounter a creature that is more perceptive, better coordinated, and potentially more dangerous than yourself? The answer was immediate and instinctual. You eliminate it before it becomes a greater threat. Exactly, Eris said. We know this because it is precisely what we did on our own world, over and over again. My species' history is a long, tragic lesson in the dangers of being perceived as a threat. We learned long ago that the greatest weapon we have is for our opponents to consistently and fatally underestimate us. We are not strong like the Cathar. We are not numerous like the Vex. We cannot survive in a vacuum like the Glyptons. Our primary advantage has always been that our enemies do not know what we are truly capable of until it is far, far too late. He gestured to the starfield behind them. When we came out into the galaxy, we saw beings like you, stronger, faster, with natural armor and weapons. We knew how you would see us as prey, as inferiors, as easy targets for exploitation or conquest, so we leaned into it. We cultivated the image of the harmless, clever primates, the friendly, slightly naive traders, and we survived, we prospered, because no one ever saw us as a threat worth eliminating. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it left Xyler speechless. Humanity's entire galactic policy was a lie, a deception on a civilizational scale maintained for centuries, a survival strategy born from a deep, ingrained understanding of predatory nature. The incident with the aide Leo Jansen, Xyler finally managed. His humanity-first movement, they don't agree with your strategy. They are fools, Aris said, a flicker of genuine anger in his eyes. They have mistaken our survival for shame. They believe we should show our strength, command respect through fear. They are children who have forgotten the lessons of our past. They don't understand that the moment we are seen as the alpha predators in this galaxy, we will be forced to act as such. It will mean a future of endless war, of constantly watching our backs, of becoming the very monsters we once fled from on our own world. I do not want that future for my people. Aris stepped closer, his voice dropping to an intense, earnest pitch. Mediator, what happened in the concourse was an accident, a disastrous, world-altering accident, but it presents us with an opportunity. The old relationship, based on your benevolent superiority and our feigned inferiority, is over. We can either let this revelation push us into a new relationship based on fear and suspicion, a cold war that will eventually turn hot, or we can build a new foundation, one based on a more honest assessment of each other. Honesty? Xyler scoffed. You speak of honesty after centuries of deception. I am being honest with you now, Aris insisted. Humanity does not want war, we want trade. We want partnership. We are not conquerors, we are survivors. Our abilities are defensive, they are reactive. They exist to keep us alive, not to dominate others. The proof is that for 200 years, we have lived among you and you never even knew. If we were the aggressive predators you fear we are, wouldn't you have known by now? The logic was undeniable. For 2 centuries, humanity had possessed this hidden advantage, and they had never once used it aggressively. They had used it to survive, to avoid traps, to secure their borders, but never to conquer. Xyler looked out at the nebula, at the countless stars that represented countless worlds. The Cathar Empire had been built on a simple principle: strength respects strength. They had always believed themselves to be the strongest. Now he was faced with a species that defined strength in a completely different way. Not in the power to destroy, but in the ability to perceive, to adapt, and to endure. What do you propose? Xyler asked, his voice low. We resume the summit, Aris said. But we renegotiate everything, not as a predator and a clever prey, but as 2 apex species of vastly different kinds. We need a new treaty, one that acknowledges our unique sensitivities. And yours, a treaty built not on the pretense of equality, but on the reality of our differences. It will be a more cautious, more respectful relationship, perhaps a less friendly one, but it will be a real one. Xyler considered the proposal. It was a path forward, a way to avoid the catastrophic alternative of open conflict. It would mean admitting to his own government that they had been fundamentally wrong about humanity for centuries. It would mean a massive shift in galactic politics. The Cathar would no longer be the undisputed top of the food chain. They would have to share that position with the soft-skinned, unassuming creatures from a forgotten death world. He turned and looked Aris Thorn directly in the eyes. For the first time, he did not see a physically weak diplomat. He saw the representative of a species that had stared into the abyss of extinction 1,000 times and had never once blinked. You are not prey, Xyler stated, the words a realization and an acknowledgement. We never were, Aris replied softly. We were just better at hiding it than you were at seeing it. A slow, grim understanding dawned on Xyler's face. He gave a short, sharp nod. Very well, Ambassador, let us begin again. Honestly, this time, the doors to the observation deck hissed open. The negotiation for the future of the galaxy was about to begin. And this time, both sides knew exactly who they were talking to. The age of comfortable illusions was over. The age of cautious, watchful respect had just begun.